All right. Sorry. Um, so hi everyone, welcome. I'm really excited to meet you all today and to share some tips around video making and storytelling. Um, so my name is Aube. It rhymes with globe. I'm a senior video producer at 350.org, and I'm based in the United States, and I love to tell stories to create social change. And that's my dog. And she's right behind me, and I'm hoping she won't bark. But if she barks, I apologize in advance. Um, okay, so today we're going to go over some basic storytelling building blocks. We're going to go over videography tips, so how to film a good video. We're going to workshop your specific story. So I hope you brought a draft of your story. It's okay if you didn't. We'll work from what we have. And then I'll just briefly talk about just distribution, like sharing your video with the world. And we'll have a little bit of time for questions and additional resources at the end. Um, so the first thing I want you to think about is what makes a story have impact. So I want you to think back to a story that you heard recently. Maybe a friend told you a story, a personal story. Maybe you saw a movie. Maybe you read a book. But like, I want you to think about something that really stayed with you, that really touched you, and maybe changed your perspective or made you want to be involved or take action in something. So I want you to think about what it was about that story that stayed with you. So try to think of one word or just a few words, and you can put it in the chat, or if you want, you can unmute yourself and just say it out loud. But just try to think of one, two, or three words um, of like what makes a story really powerful for you. Anyone? Amira or Afifa, do you have any words?
For me, I guess any good story is the one that inspires you a lot of feelings, no matter what that feeling is.
Okay, great. So strong feelings, whatever the feeling, just you feel something. Okay, great. Well, let's continue. And if anyone thinks of anything, feel free to just drop it in the chat. So, I wanted to share this quote with you because when I first heard this quote, it completely changed how I think about storytelling and making videos. Um, and it's a quote from the author Maya Angelou. And she says, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So this really goes to what Amira just said about feelings, is that a good story makes you feel something. So it doesn't just touch your head with information, but it touches your heart as well. And there's actually a lot of research and studies that have been done that show that people get engaged and take action when they're emotionally moved by something. So just keep that in mind as you prepare your own stories. So so here on this slide, I have two examples of kind of telling a story about the same subject. And I'm wondering if there might be a volunteer who would like to read example one out loud. Would someone like to read example one? If so, you can just unmute yourself and go ahead and read it.
I can do it. Uh, Abby, how can I pronounce your name?
Yes, it's pronounced Aube. Aube. Thank
Oh,
you so
like
much for volunteering. Yeah.
uh, super. Example number one. Okay, people in my town are affected by climate change. Severe storms have caused damage to people's homes, gardens, and entire communities. It is very difficult for people to recover after climate disasters. Climate disasters cause a lot of economic damage.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Karina. Is there another volunteer who would like to read example number 2? Okay, go ahead. Isaias, did I say your name right?
Isaias, yes, that's fine. Well, I try, okay? I speak Spanish, but I do my best, please. Well, in my town, my neighbor had a garden full of colorful fruits, vegetable, and flower. It smelled like a rare perfume in the garden. I have a garden, it smells like that. See, she would let me pick fresh fruit and vegetable, and they would be still warm from the sun and bursting with flavor. Last year, a hurricane swept through our town and destroyed my neighbor's home and her entire garden. Oh, she had to leave and go to the city to move in with her family because she didn't have the money to rebuild. I miss her smile and her beautiful garden. The bees and butterflies no longer came there. My neighborhood is quiet now. It's not the same anymore.
Thank
Which
you.
do you find more interesting, which made you feel something? What was different about each? That's it.
Thank you so much, Isaias. Great. Really beautiful reading too. Um,
Thank you.
okay, so the questions that Isaias just asked are the questions I want you to think about. So you can either put it in the chat or unmute yourself. Which of the 2 examples did you find more interesting?
I really found the second one.
Example 1, the first one?
The number 2.
Number 2, okay.
Yes.
And why did you find number 2 more interesting?
Well, because it's something that, as you said on the lady, right? It's something that you will never forget. Uh, it's remind you something that you love, that you lost. Remind you how it was your city, was your neighborhood. That happened here in Santo Domingo a few times, and we lost everything. People, our neighbor, lost their houses, their everything, and that issue remained in our mind for years and years and years. That's why.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, and Diara says in the chat, example 2 is more interesting because it's more personal. It has a personal story, right? Example 1 didn't have a personal story. And Princess Avian Charles says example 1 seems more informative, has more information, whereas example 2, it gives a closer and personal perspective and narrative. Great. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to dive a little bit more into the differences between the 2. So yeah, in example 1, I'm speaking about people in general, right? But in example 2, I'm speaking about a specific person, my neighbor. So in storytelling, it's often much more powerful to speak about a single person, one single person, than many people. Even if, of course, if a hurricane comes, it for sure it impacts thousands of people, many, many people. But when you talk about thousands of people, there's something about our human brain that we don't connect with a huge number of people as much as we connect with one single person. And so that's why personal storytelling or speaking about a specific person is so, so important in stories. Another thing, in example 1, I described a problem, climate change, the effect on communities, but I didn't tell a story, right? I described some facts about climate change. In example 1, yeah, I shared facts. I didn't use also like visuals, like a story with colors, with smells, with taste. I didn't evoke the sensory perceptions and feelings. So in a story, it's really good to have people feeling things. So imagining a smell, like Isaias, you said, oh, I have a garden that has a beautiful perfume as well. Like you connected with that. So it's a way of having people connect with your story is when you give them something to visually imagine, or imagine with their noses, or imagine with their taste buds, or with their ears. Like sensory perceptions are really important in storytelling. And then in example one, I spoke about climate disasters in general, but in example two, I was specific. So it's really important to be specific with your stories. So I spoke about a specific hurricane, how it affected a specific person. And in example two, I didn't say climate disasters cause a lot of damage, right? I didn't say that. I said that in example one, but I didn't need to say it in example two because you knew it from the story. So I didn't need to tell you. Instead, I showed you with visuals and with a story. And so this is one of the most important rules in storytelling that you'll hear over and over again. People say, show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. If there's one thing you remember from this workshop, remember, show, don't tell. And so, yeah, instead of giving us facts, show us through images and actions and stories instead of telling us through factual statements. Okay, moving on. So I want to go over just quickly because we don't have a lot of time, but I want to go over 3 different storytelling approaches. And these are just 3 examples. There are many more ways to tell stories, but they're examples that we see a lot and they're useful to know about. So the first one is called the hero's journey. It's also called the 3-act structure. And this is what you'll see in like movies, in novels, in fairy tales. It's like a classic example would be like the Lord of the Rings film. And so basically it's 3 parts. The first part is you're introduced to the hero's world and all is well in that world. In number 2, in the second part, a challenge arises that the hero has to face. Maybe it's a battle, maybe it's just a complicated problem that the hero has to face. And in the third part of the story, the hero faces the challenge and they return to their world, and they are transformed by the experience. So this is like a very, very classic storytelling approach. A second storytelling approach is called the human action model, and it's based on the idea that we as humans are always looking for something better, something that's better than our current situation. And so in this model, you have a journey from point A to point B. Point A is the present moment where there's a problem, something's not quite right. And point B is like the better future that we want to get to, the better future that we want to achieve. And the journey between point A to point B is your call to action. So with climate change, the problem is we're facing a climate crisis right now. We can imagine a better world that's possible, but to get there, we need to take action. So this is a very simple model. It's one of my favorite storytelling models because it's very, very simple. You can use it in all kinds of different ways. And at 350, we use it a lot. You can use it for like really, really short videos. Like you can make a 10-second video based on this model. So that's why I like it. It's very easy and simple. The third model is one that you're already familiar with because I know you all did a workshop on this, which is the public narrative framework. And it's 3 parts: the story of self. So why are you personally called to this mission, to care about this issue? Number 2 is the story of us. So what is it about your community that makes it care about this issue? How is your community mobilizing around this? And then part 3 is the story of now, which establishes the urgency and the need for action to motivate the audience. So I know that you're familiar with this one, so I'm quickly mentioning it. So those are like 3 types of storytelling models, but good storytelling can also be just boiled down to two essential elements. The first is the power of the anecdote. And what is an anecdote? It's basically, it's just a series of events. So if I'm telling you a story about something I did last weekend, I'm going to say, well, first I did this, and then I did this, and that led to this, and then this happened, and then this person showed up. So all it is I'm just giving you a series of events. And that's basically, that's what storytelling is. So in a very simple way, there's something in our brains that loves to follow a sequence of events. And when somebody is telling us this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, we want to follow them. We want to know, like, well, okay, and then what happened? And then what happened? So it's a very simple thing, but it's a very powerful thing. The other powerful element is the power of the bait. And the bait is like the questions in your story or the emotions in your story that keeps people interested and they want to know more. Like they get maybe really attached to a character in your story, or maybe you're the character in your story and they really like you and they want to know, well, what happens to you? Like what's going to happen? And so it's the thing that keeps us wanting to know what happens in a story. Like when you have a page turner, a book that you can't put it down, you just read the whole book right to the end. That's the power of the bait. Okay. So next I want to talk quickly about a hook. I don't know if you've all ever heard of a hook within the context of stories. But nowadays in our era of social media and like we're all so saturated with videos and photos and people are posting everything on social media. There's so much content. And research shows that it takes people only about 3 to 5 seconds when they watch your video before they decide, okay, I'm going to scroll to the next thing. I'm going to go look at the next thing in my feed. And so a hook is the thing at the beginning of your story that tells people, wait, don't go anywhere. I've got a good story for you. I want you to stay with me because I'm going to tell you this story. So a hook can be anything. It can be all kinds of different things. So here I've got 12 different examples, but there are many more examples. You can come up with your own creative hooks. Sometimes a hook is a really, really simple thing, actually. So I'll just go over a few of these examples. Like one would be a powerful image, just a powerful visual that keeps people, wow, that's incredible. Like, what is this? What's going on here? Another one is like a breaking story, like this is happening right now, or this just happened in my community. Another example would be like what's called a listicle, which is used a lot in social media. I'm sure you've seen it, like 3 things you can do, to stop climate change, or like five ways you can get involved in your community. It's like a list of different things. Don't know why, but people love lists. So it's a good hook. Number 4 would be like an underreported story. So I'm going to tell you a story that no one has told you. No one is telling you, but I'm going to tell it to you. So as you can see, these are just like some examples of hooks. I'm not going to go through all of these. But yeah, I want you to start thinking about little hooks, ways that you can start your story so that people stay with you and stay with your video. Okay, so when we tell stories, it really helps to set clear goals. So there are some questions to ask yourself. One is, who do you want to hear your story? Who's your audience? What do you want people to do after they see your video? Do you want them to attend a rally? Do you want them to sign a petition? Do you want them to join your group? Do you want to change their perspective on something? Do you want them to call their elected representative to put pressure on them on a certain issue? So think about what is it that you want people to do after they watch your video? Your video to have good impact, a video should have a goal, like a purpose. So think about what's your purpose with your video. How will you get your story to reach its desired audience? So if you can, of course, put your video on social media, that's the most obvious way, but there are other ways too. And sometimes just putting it on social media is not enough. You need to think about ways to, how are people going to share it on social media? And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then how will you measure your video's impact? Is it the number of views that the video gets? Is it the number of signatures that were added to your petition? Is it the number of people that showed up at your event? So just think about like, how will you know that your video, that your video did well, so that when you make your next video, you can maybe change something to make it a little bit better. All right, now we're gonna, so that was my spiel about the storytelling aspect. Are there any questions around that before we move on to video tips? Okay, we'll have time at the end for questions too. And you can always pop your questions in the chat if you have any. So now I just want to go over some basic video tips. And nowadays, all you need to make a good video is your phone. You can also use a camera if you want, but I'll be talking more from a phone perspective because I think that's what most people are using now. So my number one tip when you're making videos with your phone, because our phones, we put them on our kitchen tables, they're in our pockets, they're everywhere, right? And so oftentimes the lens on both the front and the back of the phone are a little bit greasy. They're a little bit dirty. Sometimes we don't even realize it. But so my number one tip is the first thing is just wipe the front of your camera and the back of your camera with a soft cloth. Like it can be like a soft t-shirt. And that actually makes a huge difference. When people send me videos when they didn't wipe their lens, it's my pet peeve because it really affects the quality of the video quite a bit. And it's a very, very quick, simple thing that you can do to have much better quality with your phone. So another tip is just check how much storage space you have on your phone. Just make sure you have enough room on your phone for your video. Delete some files if you need to. Put your phone in airplane mode to avoid like notifications of text coming in or your phone ringing if someone calls you. And then check your phone camera settings. You'll see here in the little black box that I have ticked the option that says 1080p HD at 30 FPS. So don't worry too much about what that means, but if you have camera settings on your phone, which you should, I think all phones do, 720p is not quite HD. It's a little bit, the quality is lesser. So you want to choose 1080p instead of 720p. If you have the option, like here you see on my phone, I do have the option to film at 4K. 4K is like really, really good definition. It's even better, but it's not really necessary. Like it takes up a lot of room on your phone. And if you're uploading your video to someone, it's going to take a longer time to upload. So it's up to you. If you want, you can film at 4K, but I usually just film at 1080p because it's really good quality. It's good enough. The thing I would just avoid is 720p because that's a lower quality. And I suggest 30 FPS instead of 60 FPS because it has a nicer, it's more like a look that looks like film as opposed to video. It just has a more artistic look. So 30 FPS is what I would recommend. All right, so there are 4 stages of video making, and I just quickly want to go over them just so you're aware of them. And this is whether you're making a Hollywood big budget blockbuster film or whether you're making a small video on your phone. It's the same thing. There's these 4 different stages to making a video. The first stage is pre-production, and that's just where you're planning your video. So maybe you're doing a bit of research, you're writing your script. If you're interviewing someone, you're scheduling an interview, you're charging your phone, making sure the battery's full, things like that. Production is the actual filming. So you're going to go out and film your video. Post-production is the editing. And for a selfie video, you don't always need to edit it. That's optional. But that is one of the stages of video making. And then the last stage is distribution, which is where you put your video out into the world and have it seen by people. So let's talk about what makes a great selfie video, because that is probably what most of you are going to be doing for this I Love the Caribbean campaign, is you'll probably film yourselves, I assume. Maybe not, maybe you're filming someone else. But a lot of the principles are the same, whether you're filming yourself or filming someone else with your phone. So the first thing to think about is location. So number one, try to choose a well-lit and a quiet location where there's not a lot of background noises, dog barking, or, you know, a loud machine or something like that. And try to choose a location that maybe gives some context about that reflects what you're talking about. So if you're talking about you come from a fishing family and, you know, the recent hurricane really affected, like, I don't know, the fishing boats in your community, then while you're speaking, maybe you want to stand in front of the boats and the beach and the ocean, because that's what you're talking about. So try to think about, you can film yourself in a neutral location if you want, like just a white wall as your background, but it's more interesting if you're in a location that reflects what you're speaking about. So when you frame a selfie video, first of all, you want to film vertical. So you want to film like this with your phone, not like this. You want to film not too far, not too close. So I generally say like not more than an arm's length away. An arm's length is usually like a good distance. Ideally, you should probably film from the waist up and leave a little bit of room above your head. So you can see in the first two examples, there's room above their head. You can see their, you know, from the waist up, their head and shoulders. In the third example, it's just a little bit too close, because oftentimes with videos, we want to put captions. And when it's that close to somebody's face, the captions sometimes end up on their mouth, and that's not good. So you want to, you know, see their whole face. So example 3 is a little bit too close, and example 4 is a little bit too far away. I mean, you can film that far away. My concern with filming that far away is that if you're filming with a phone and you don't have a microphone, your audio won't be very good because your phone will be too far from the person. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense. The other thing you want to think about is the lighting. So where is your light coming from? You want the source of your light to be in front of you or in front of your subject, not behind them, because you can see in the first example there, the little girl, her face is in the shadows, right? Because the light is coming from behind her. When the light comes from in front of you, that's example 2, then you can see the whole face. In example 3, you just kind of see half of her face, right? Because the light is coming from the side. And that's an artistic choice. A lot of people really like that because it gives a little bit of like mystery almost, right? To her face. It's like, there's a little bit of drama there. And that's something that you can definitely do. But the thing to avoid would be having the light directly behind you. And soft light, oops, I just wanted to say one more thing about that. Soft light is better than harsh light. So if you're filming under the noonday sun, it's a very harsh light. It's very, very bright. It's direct. You're going to have big shadows under people's eyes. You're going to have dramatic shadows. So soft light is better. So photographers and videographers love to film in the morning and in the evening right before sunset. It's called golden hour. Maybe you've heard that term before. Golden hour is when the sun is about to go down. It's like a beautiful, soft golden light. And it makes images look really, really beautiful. So think about what time of day you're filming, especially if you're filming outside. Morning and evening are really great times to film. Middle of the day can be tricky, unless it's an overcast day. If it's a gray day, then you can film any time of the day because the light is already soft because of the clouds. The clouds are softening the light. All right, so that's a bit about lighting. Then something else to think about is shot stability. So when a video is shaky and it bounces all over, people don't really want to watch it. It's better if you obviously hold your phone or camera very still. So you can, if you have a tripod, that's great. If you don't have a tripod, you can, sometimes I'll put my phone on like a pile of books, just to keep it steady. Or you can also like right now I'm on a tabletop, and if I put my elbow on the table and hold my arm, I can actually hold my phone very, very still. So sometimes just bracing yourself on something or leaning against a wall, just giving your body a little bit of stability will allow you to film in a really stable way. And then try not to use the zoom function on your phone. If you need to get closer to your subject, just walk closer to your subject as opposed to zooming, because zooming in you'll lose a lot of the quality of the image. All right, I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you. I hope you're still with me. We're almost through the video tips. So next thing to think about is audio. So I already mentioned, just make sure your subject is not too far from the phone. Arm's length is a good measurement. Choose a quiet place. And if you have a microphone, definitely use it, but it's not necessary. So some video tips for selfies is number one, make eye contact. So look directly into your camera lens, because people connect when they connect with your eyes, right? So eye contact is really important. So if you have a script, try not to read from the script. A, because it'll make you sound kind of robotic sometimes, and it's not as engaging for people, but B, because you want to connect with your eye contact. So if you have a script, try to memorize it and try to read it in a way that doesn't sound like a script. So try to read it in a way like pretend that you have a friend in front of you and you're just speaking casually with your friend. Don't use academic words or big words. This is not a class presentation. The videos that do best are videos where people speak in simple language as if you're speaking to friends or family. So when you're reading your script, ask yourself, is my script, does this sound formal as if I'm giving like a formal presentation, or does this sound casual and engaging like I'm speaking with a friend? So try to speak from the heart, be expressive, like use gestures, use your hands, use facial expressions, like don't do anything, fake or crazy, but be natural, be yourself, like be expressive. Don't be a robot, basically. And then be specific, tell stories instead of facts. Like I said before where we looked at those two examples. So instead of saying like farmers are affected by climate change, which is a fact, share a story that tells people that. So in my town, there was a farmer who grew the most juicy apples in the whole region, but then her land was flooded and she lost all of her crops and had to abandon her farm. So you're relaying the same information, but you're relaying it in a story instead of a fact. All right, and then finally, the last part is editing tips. And the number one thing to know is you don't have to edit. You can just film this video and send it to Amira and Afifa, and that will be great. If you would like to edit, then that is an option to you. And there is a free app that is called CapCut. And because we don't have a lot of time in this workshop, I'm not going to go into the specifics of video editing, but I've put a YouTube link here at the bottom for you. And this is a really, really excellent tutorial. It's 45 minutes long. It will show you exactly how to use CapCut so that you can edit your video. And I highly recommend it if you want to try video editing. If you do video editing, a few tips is just only keep your best moments, your best videos. So you have to be a little bit ruthless when you're video editing. Try to keep your video under 2 minutes because those are the videos that tend to do best on social media. So as a general rule, under 2 minutes. There are always exceptions, of course. And if your video needs to be longer, then, well, check with Amira and Afifa because I'm not 100% sure. They absolutely have to be under 2 minutes. But in general, they have to be under 2 minutes. If you add titles, text to your video, keep them very short and very simple. One of the number one mistakes people make when they start video editing is that they put a lot of text on their videos. And video is not a text-based medium. It's not, we have other things for that. We have social media posts that are texts, we have books, but a video is a visual language. And so it's okay to have some text is good, but people don't have time to read a lot of text, especially when they're paying attention to what you're saying. Maybe there's music, there's images moving. It'll just complicate the video too much if there's a lot of text. So keep the text really, really simple. And don't let the text go all the way to the edge of your frame, because when you upload it to Instagram, it will get cut off and you won't be able to read it. So don't let it have a little bit of space between the edges of your frame. Make sure there's a call to action at the end of your video. And yeah, I hope that if you do decide to edit, I hope that that tutorial is useful for you. I think it will be. All right, so I thought we could take just a quick little break if we need it, to go to the bathroom or whatever, just 5 minutes. And while we do that, just if you don't already have it, bring your public narrative story from the workshop, the public narrative workshop that you did. Don't worry if you don't have one, that's okay. But also bring back with you a pen and paper because we're going to do a little writing exercise. So I was going to have a couple of you read your draft story, but we're a little bit short on time. And there's an exercise that I'd really like you to do, and then for a couple of volunteers to share that exercise. So I think we'll just go straight to the exercise. But I want you to think about the story that you wrote, the draft story that you wrote in the public narrative workshop. And I want you to think about these things. I want you to think about, does your story have a hook at the beginning? Is it going to grab people's attention? And with these I Love the Caribbean videos, the hook can be something really simple. It doesn't have to be a complicated thing, For example, I don't know. If I start my video with like, hi, my name is Aube, I'm from Canada. Maybe I have a little prop, like maybe I have a little Canada flag and I wave my Canada flag, or like something to make the visual more interesting. Or like there's an Instagrammer that I follow and she starts all her videos. She starts out of the frame and then she goes, hi, so it's like a tiny little thing, but it's a little hook. It makes it a little bit more dynamic and unique to who you are. And then the viewer says, oh, this person's interesting. Like, let's see what they have to say, So it can be like a very, very small and simple thing. If you're talking about the city that you love and the people in the city and the sounds and the smells, maybe the first shot is of you walking in your city and saying, hi, my name is Aube, this is my city. Like, and you're like walking in between people and it's very crowded. Like that's kind of an interesting visual, right? So yeah, hooks can be very, very simple, but I do want you to think about, does my story have a hook? Also ask yourself, does my story share a personal story? Does it make my audience feel an emotion? And a good way to test this is to tell your story or read your script to a friend or family and ask them, did that make you feel something? Like, or like, what part of it did you like the best? Or what part of it made you feel something? Is just a really good way to make sure that your story has some emotion to it. Does it make the audience imagine something like a smell or a sight or a sound or something sensory? Does your story tell the viewer how they can take action and make the viewer want to take action? And then ask yourself, how long does it take me to read through my story? So read through it or say it out loud and make sure it's not too much longer than 2 minutes. All right, so we're going to do a little exercise. We have a script template here for you. And this is a template, so it's a suggestion. So of course, you don't have to use this or use it exactly as it is. But for this exercise, let's try working with it and see how it goes. So basically for this I Love the Caribbean campaign, these campaign videos, this is the script we're going to start working with. So first you'll introduce yourself. My name is, and I'm from. Second, you'll say one thing that you love about your region where you live, about your country. Third thing is you'll state a challenge. So my region is currently being affected by whatever the thing is. Number 4, you'll incorporate the why me part from your public narrative story. So why are you called to this issue? Like, why do you care? And if you can, this is a good moment to share a little story instead of just saying like, well, I care about climate change because I care about the environment. Like, that's not enough. Like, tell us a little story. Like, why was there something in your childhood that made you care about this? Or was there something that recently woke you up to this issue? Or like, tell us a little story about like, why do you care? Why me? Number 5, and these, by the way, can all be very short. They can be like one sentence. For this exercise right now, let's just make it one sentence per each item, okay? For your actual video, you can make it a little bit longer if you want, as long as it's under 2 minutes. But for this exercise, let's just keep it to one sentence, just to keep it nice and short and simple so that a few of you have time to read through what you wrote. Okay, so we went through numbers 1 to 4. Number 5 is the vision. So how do you envision the future in your community? Like, what do you want? What is the better future that you look forward to, that you hope for your community? Number 6 is the solution. So in order to overcome this challenge that your community is facing, what does your community need? Like, what do we need to do? How do we need to take action? And then number 7 is the call to action, where you engage your audience, your viewer, that they can also take action. So you can also be part of the solution by signing the petition, or it can be something else. But I think in this case, correct me if I'm wrong, Amira, but I think there is a petition, right, with this campaign. So you can invite people to sign the petition, and also they can get more involved by visiting the CaribbeanClimateNetwork.org website. So let's take, okay, let's take, how much time do we need? Is 5 minutes enough? Maybe not. Let's check back in 5 minutes and see how many people are done. If you need more time, we'll take another 5 minutes, okay? So just one sentence per each item. And then if you would like to volunteer to share what you wrote, that would be really wonderful. Okay, so I'll be right here if there are any questions, but I'll see you. I will mute myself and I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Beautiful plot. town.
This meeting is being recorded.
As time went by, population grew, the bank of the river became filled with houses that began to throw the solid weights of garbage into ravine that flowed into the summer river, polluting its waters. Quantity of plastic container reached the river and be thrown indiscriminately, turning into a landfill. In addition to it, all about an electrical generation plant was installed in the river, which received water from the river to cool it, boil it, and return it to the river at about 85 degrees. That caused that fishes and plant and everything die in the river, so we don't have the clear water anymore. And in our organization, PACMA, we launch very often protests to the government asking to remove the power plant from the river, and also we educate the people who live around the river to stop throwing their garbage into the river. That we come into action when we do some kind of protest in the street, along the riverside, to bring the people educated about the problem, the cost, the plastic, and everything. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. That's a really powerful story, and I'm sad to hear
Longer,
about.
but I caught it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, so I have a few comments and I have a few suggestions, but keep in mind, I'm going to make suggestions on all your stories, but keep in mind, suggestions are suggestions. Your story is your story. Only you know how to tell it and what the best way to tell it is. I'm just making suggestions for things to think about. Okay, so the first thing that I love about your story is I love when you say that you escaped from school to go jump in the river.
Yes,
Because
we used
I
to.
feel, yeah, I feel like we all can
And
relate.
every time I got spanking when I come, because the water river stay in my skin and make my skin like everybody know I was in the river.
Uh-huh. So I feel like that's a really beautiful visual story because we can all relate to like wanting to run away from school and just like jump in the water on a hot day, like so what I would like to see, or my suggestion is like I would like you to maybe come back to that story at the end of your story, that how is that being threatened? So I'm interpreting that the thing you love about the Caribbean is that as a kid, you got to jump in this beautiful, clean, fresh river. And that action, being able to do that, is threatened by the garbage and climate change. And so maybe you could come back to the story and say, something that would evoke, I think, an emotion in people is that today, the kids can't jump in the river, or like I can't jump in the river anymore the way I used to. And that's like a loss, right? That people would have a strong. So tell us, like, so there was this thing that you loved, and but tell us a little bit further, like why. So you're telling us about the garbage, you're telling us about the problem of the river is very polluted, but like how does that affect you emotionally, or how does that affect your community? So I would go a little bit further to come back to the joy of jumping in the water, that incredible pleasure of jumping in a clean river, that's no longer possible. So that would be my one suggestion. Yeah, go ahead.
I taking pictures of how the children going now to bath in the river among the garbage. That is amazing. That is a big difference when it was in the past and why it is now. I put in picture together to put it in the video.
Oh, amazing. That will be really, really powerful, I think, the contrast of from the past to the present. Okay, great. And then my other quick suggestion before we move on to someone else to share their story is when you talk about the flora and the fauna, the birds and the fish, I wonder if there might be a more specific story that you could get even more, because remember with storytelling, the more specific you are, the more people will connect with your story. So I wonder if there a specific flora or fauna? Is there a particular plant that you connect with personally, or is there a particular animal from that river that you love, like I don't know, a particular fish or so if there is, mention that specific thing instead of saying in general terms flora and
I do
fauna.
it. I do it. I have two different kind of fishes that I mentioned in the history.
Oh,
Guabina,
okay, sorry, I missed them.
tilapia. I mentioned in the
Okay.
history.
But maybe tell us a little bit more about them. Like I don't know what those fish are. So why are you mentioning why do you like those specific fish? Why are you mentioning those so that people know a little bit more? Ah, this is why tilapia is like, you know.
Yes, what happened? We used to catch the little fishes called guabinas and tilapias. And then we used to, when we got home, we hide it from our fathers, right? And then in the neighborhood, we sell it to the little kid. So they grow it into a small pot and something like that. Now, with the problem with the power plant in the river, the fishes they can hatch because the power plant pull the water to cool the boilers and then send it back to the river with a very, very high temperature. So that kill all the eggs and avoid those fishes to come to live, to alive.
So that story to me is very interesting because it's very specific. You're telling me a story about like yeah, like what you used to do with this fish when you were little. And so you might want to consider incorporating that. So we're going to move on to someone else because we don't have a lot of time. And I just want to at least get through one other story if we have time, maybe two. But the other thing I want to suggest to everyone and to you, Isaiah, is as an exercise after this workshop, I do recommend that you put your public narrative story to the side for a moment and start with a fresh sheet of paper, pen, and go through this exercise from 1 to 7 with just one sentence for each one. One sentence for each line and read through it. And then there may be elements that you want to keep from this story and from the public narrative story. Like your perfect video script might end up being a combination of both. Do you know what I mean? So I think as an exercise, this is a really good exercise to go through to just do the one sentence for each of the 7 items. And then you can kind of compare the stories and say, okay, what you could even read them both to someone and say, what parts of this story do you like? What parts should I keep? Which parts should I let go of? It's a good exercise to go through to try different ways of telling the narrative. So that would be my suggestion. All right. So who else would like to read their story? You have a volunteer?
I can go.
Okay, go ahead, Karina.
Oh, for sure. Uh, hello, my name is Karina Cortijo Robles, and I'm from Puerto Rico. One thing that I love about the Caribbean is extensive indigenous legacy and heritage. However, many archaeological sites are being affected by sea level rise and stronger hurricanes. I I care about these, though that during my research, I saw cultural material being dragged by the sea, thus losing that history. I envision a future where my region can enjoy the indigenous legacy without fearing that in the future we may not have those. To conserve more this heritage, we need a just transition to renewable energy and sustainable measures. You can be part of the solution by signing the petition and getting involved by visiting CaribbeanClimateNetwork.org. I know that it's not a lot, uh, but I can work on it.
Yeah, that's okay. I only gave you guys 5 minutes to write this, so I'm not expecting a big masterpiece. And the thing is that it's just, because we were limited on time, and I just asked you to just do one sentence for each one. But after this workshop, you can sit down with it and you can make it a little bit longer, um, so I appreciate you keeping it short though, because we're so short on time. So yeah, I think maybe you could expand it a little bit, and especially the storytelling part, you could add a little bit more like, and I don't know if I heard, well, what was the part? Can you read again number 4, the like why me part?
Oh, yeah. So I care about this because during my research, I used the term cultural materials, but actually it's just like archaeological artifacts being dragged by the sea, thus losing that history.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, I wonder if that could be expanded on a little bit more to tell us more, like a little bit more about your personal story with that. Like
Yeah,
that would be one part that I think you could tell us more. Like when I hear that, I'm feel like I don't fully understand what you mean. Like I feel like I'm like, oh, tell me more. Like, what do you mean by that? Or what does that mean? So like just like expanding it a little bit.
okay.
Amira, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add on that same thing that you're talking about. Maybe you can say like on the last month I went on this doing this field work and I found all these archaeological materials that were destroyed with the water, with the flooding, and we lost all this information, this valuable information, and I saw this like precious vase, I don't know, or something that it was broken. You can explain how that made you feel and how it looks like in the field that we're losing archaeological material because of climate change.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Um, One of the reasons why you probably heard me through this presentation often say, like, pretend you're talking to a friend, is because when we speak to people that know us and that we care about, we're telling them stories. And when we have to write something, a video script or a project, our language changes and it becomes more formal and it becomes less storytelling oriented. It becomes more like facts, and so that's why I always encourage people, like, imagine that you're telling, if you're talking to your best friend and your best friend says, but Karina, I don't understand, like, why do you care about cultural heritage sites so much and historical sites? Like, I don't understand, because I don't really, maybe that person doesn't really share that passion. So what is it about you? Like, what is it about you personally, about your life, that makes you care about that? Like, and then you would probably share a story with them. Well, the reason, you probably like, so try to think like that, like as if you're speaking to someone you care about and you're just trying to make them understand why this matters to you so much. And then I'm sure some interesting stories will come out.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, do we have time? Okay, we're pretty much out of time, I think, right, Amira? I think we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Karina and Isaiah, for sharing your story in a group. I know it's not always easy also to just share your story like that, and get feedback. And so, yeah, I hope it was a little bit helpful for everyone. But I think the thing about storytelling is that sometimes it takes a while to get to your story to get to the, you have to work with it, right? You have to, don't be afraid to share it with people. Like just grab a friend and say, hey, can you sit down for a minute? I want to read you something that I wrote. Like, tell me what you think. Tell me, like, does this make you feel something? Like, how do you feel about this? And then read it to someone else and see how they feel about it. And just like, don't be afraid to like workshop your story and tweak it and change it. And it's like a sculpture, you know, you have to mold it into its shape over time. So keep working at it. All right. So just to wrap up quickly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the last part of video making, which is getting your story into the world. So distribution, sharing your story. For these specific videos that you'll be making, 350 is going to share them to social media. So you don't have to worry too much about how you're going to share them because 350 is already going to do it. And they're going to invite you as a collaborator so that it'll be a joint collaborative post. But I just quickly wanted to mention other ways that you can share videos. And also when you do put it on social media, it's often not enough to just put it on social media. You want to ask people to share it. So if ask your friends and family or like share it to your, like share it with people. If you know someone who is an influencer or is really interested in these same issues, maybe ask them if they would be willing to share your video. You can also you can embed the video in an email to friends or family or to your elected representative to share your story further. You could send your video along with a letter to the editor to your local newspaper. You could present your video in a public setting, like if there's a public meeting about some of the issues that your video talks about, you could also present it in a public setting. You could even submit it to a film festival, maybe. So there are just think about different things that you can also do with your video. When it's your first video, yeah, you might not want to do all those things with it. You might want to wait until you've made a few different videos. But yeah, it's always good to be thinking about like, okay, it's now that I've made my video, how do I get people to see it? And for it to have impact, because that's ultimately what we want. And just very quickly, like you probably know all these already, but some sharing platforms that you could share your video to would be YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Threads, a website, an email, a newsletter, or a blog post. There are many different ways that you can share a video. So I've posted some additional resources there. I'll just especially bring your attention to the last one, the filming checklist. That's something you might want to use for this particular video because what I did is I copy and pasted the script template that for the exercise that you just did. So if you want to refer back to it, that's there. And then also just a quick checklist of things to remember. Like, did you wipe your phone camera lens? Little things like that, just to make sure you're not forgetting anything. Are there any questions that people have before we close? I know I went through a lot of information quite fast. So, like Amira said, the recording will be available so you can go back to it. You can also access the slides. And yeah, I really hope that it was a little bit useful. So thank you so much, everyone. If there are no questions, I'm going to hand it over back to Amira